What's going on, guys? So on the recent live stream on the USA Gundam TV channel, someone asked about making a plastic model Christmas ornament, and I thought it was a really cool idea, and so I thought it was a perfect opportunity to try out one of these artifact kits, one of the Gundam artifact kits. We had a whole contest of these artifact series, and I've still not built one myself, so I thought it's a good opportunity to build one, and we'll make it into a Christmas ornament. So the one that I've chosen here is the Byarlant Custom. This is from set 1. There's a couple of really cool ones in set 2, and then in the upcoming set 3 as well. So if I have a good time and enjoy building this one, which I'm sure I probably will, I'll maybe check out a couple other ones in the future. I'm not interested necessarily in buying full sets of them, because there's some designs that I'm not really that interested in, but there's a couple of really cool ones out there. The thing about these kits is that they're really cool designs, really interesting interpretations of some classic Gundam designs, and then really nicely detailed as well. But as you can see, they're all molded in one color, so they're definitely going to require paint, I guess, unless you wanted to keep them and leave them in this color. And this color is supposed to represent the look of like a garage kit, a resin model kit, and so that's really cool. And so I think you could just leave it like that if you wanted to, just for like the novelty of it. But painting these very small kits is only going to be half the battle. The other difficult part of these kits is just going to be the seam lines, as they're having a lot of seam lines and in very detailed areas of the kit, so I think that's going to be the main trouble. So I'm going to go ahead and get to work on putting this together and working on the seam lines, and then we'll come back and I'll show you guys how it's looking before we get into the painting. I'm getting my way through the construction. A couple things I want to point out to you guys here. All of the kind of thruster bells on the kit have just like a flat detail on the inside, so what I'm doing with those, and this one is kind of up underneath this part here already, is I'm just drilling those out to make the hole a little bit deeper. And another example of that you can see here is up in the armpit, so that's where the arm fits into that hole right there. This one is just a flat detail that I drilled out just to make that thruster bell look a little bit more convincing. The other quote-unquote, I guess, modification that I'm making to this is not putting things in when they're supposed to be put in. So like, for example, for this shoulder armor, you're supposed to put the arm in ahead of time. That's why the top part is kind of molded like this kind of T shape that's meant to be fit in there. So now that I've actually gone ahead and glued the shoulder armor here together already, this doesn't just slot into there. So all I'm gonna have to do is just cut away the top of this part here. And then what I'm going to do, once I got everything primed, now I'm going to prime the kit. I'm going to spray primer on it in a few different sections, but then I'm going to glue it together and do the painting once it's all totally assembled. So for now, as I'm still working on just getting all the seams and everything all cleaned up, I'm going to leave it all disassembled like this, then spray the primer, and then once the primer is on and I'm ready to paint, I can just slot that arm up into place there like that. And it actually sticks pretty well now because it's a pretty tight fit, but I'm just gonna leave this out for the time being. So there's just a couple of simple modifications that I'm making, but here you can see kind of just how everything's looking so far. Everything's all pretty well cleaned up here on the body and on this leg. Now once I have the primer on there, I may also notice a couple of bits that need to be just maybe puttied and sanded a little bit more, but there's like seam line all the way down the front of the leg. Went ahead and got rid of that. And yeah, so far it's looking pretty good. Let me just go ahead and continue on. Okay, so skipping ahead a couple of days here, as you can see, I've got all the base painting done. So I finished the assembly, primed it all in a brown mahogany primer, and then did all my base painting. And now I've put a little bit of gloss coat on it, and I'm ready to do some panel lining. So there wasn't really too much else to say about the process. I just hand painted this with some SMS lacquers, and it was challenging. I mean, obviously there was a lot of seam lines to get rid of, so once all the seam lines were all cleaned up, I had to go in and paint in all the colors. So basically there's a little bit of like blue-green for a couple of piping bits, a couple little bits of red, and then like a dark German gray for like the frame, and then the armor is two-tone gray. So the coloring is based off of the Byarlant Custom 02, the Iridium Messinas version, and then a little bit of white there for the V-fin. The face and the head camera there was especially difficult just because that's really tiny in there. And I was gonna put at least an EFSF marking here on the shoulder, but the way the panel lines are there, it would be kind of difficult to fit EFSF marking on there in a way that looked right, because it needs to be like a little bit higher up on the shoulder, but there's like a weird panel line detail there, and I could put it over the panel line and just cut the decal, but it didn't really look it didn't really feel like that was going to look right. So what I opted to do was just place my EFSF decal here on the base. So here's my just little woodblock base for this. Go ahead and just drill the hole for the foot and put the EFSF logo right there on the front of the woodblock. I think that's going to look pretty good. So all that's really left to do on this guy is a little bit of panel lining. I'm going to use both brown and black, and then that'll just be pinned into there. I'll also need to put a little bit of top coat on it, then some matte top coat on this beforehand. The base I'm going to leave glossy like this. I used a gloss varnish on that, so that would be nice and shiny. And then there's the question of how we're going to make this to hang on a Christmas tree. Now, my first thought was to just make a little hook here on the back of the mobile suit, use like a screw-in eyelet, just like screw that into there, and then I can hang something on that. But I thought also, just because of the weight of the wood and the fact that I would prefer not to have anything actually attached to the mobile suit, I think it'll work out pretty well to just behind where the mobile suit's standing. In here, I'm just going to put a little rod in there, kind of turned, and then we can string something on that, and I think that'll be a better option, but we'll get to that in just a second. Let's go ahead and do the panel lining on this guy. So this is what I'm going to use here to attach the string now. I'm just going to drill a couple holes, stick this down into the base, and then we can get our string that we're going to use. This is just a 1mm brass rod. That looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. And now the question is what to use. I was thinking to either use twine or this red ribbon, and the red ribbon's more distracting kind of like color-wise, but it does seem to be probably more festive for Christmas, since it is a Christmas ornament at the end of the day. Let's just try this. And the nice thing about just having this as just a brass loop there basically is that later if I, don't really like this red or something, if I want to change it later, or maybe next year I want to do twine instead, I can just cut it off and do again. So here's a look at the finished product, guys. Really happy with this, and just as far as the artifact kit goes itself, really glad that I was finally able to build one of these artifact kits because they're very cool designs. Not the easiest kits though, just because of how small they are, the seam line removal, so not exactly very beginner friendly, but I would say they are definitely a lot of fun if you are, just willing to take a little bit of time. And they don't necessarily take a ton of time. I didn't spend a whole lot of time on this kit. I could have gone in and painted more of the details, picked out more of the details. I wanted to keep the color scheme fairly simple, not overly complicated, but you could go in and add more like really tiny decals and stuff on it. So you could really go to town on it, as we saw with a lot of the entries in the artifact contest. So we had a lot of really great entries in that contest, and you guys did a really good job on those. But as an idea of just making a Christmas ornament out of one, I think this was a really fun little project here. And if you guys did want to make your own Christmas ornament, but maybe you don't want to use one of the artifact kits, I think some of like the Star Wars Mecha Collection kits would be a really good one for that. There's also the Dragon Ball Mecha Collection kits. Those are just really small kits. Those also take a fair amount of painting, but maybe a little bit easier possibly than this. And you have stuff that's a little bit larger, like some of the Pokeplot kits. Like some of the Pokeplot Quick kits would be really easy because they're cheap and easy to put together. Just an interesting idea for you guys to share, and that's going to be about it for this video. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you have questions, of course, leave those down in the comment section below. Like and subscribe. That would be greatly appreciated. But there's only one thing left for me to do here with this guy. Go put him on the tree.